got you into vintage clothing?
I wouldn't say it was one person in general, but it was a mixture of everything really, to be honest. You know, social media, Depop, friends, going out shopping, and just I've been into fashion for the past couple of years, I'd say, and just vintage clothing has just, I guess, naturally just sort of come on to me, I guess.
How do you get your vintage clothing?
Depop, kilo sales, people just selling items, asking people, you know, just wherever you go, really, just get it.
What's special about vintage clothing to you?
I know it's got a lot of character to it for me. Like, compared to all the designer clothing and stuff, vintage clothing, it's been through a lot. It's from a previous era, and I feel like you're representing that era when you're wearing a certain piece of clothing. Also, what's special about vintage clothing to me is that, like, I used to wear a lot of designer, or at least I'd like to try buy a lot of designer clothing, or, you know, the new hypebeast clothing and stuff, but it's really expensive. Whereas with vintage clothing, you can get just as much good clothes, but for a much cheaper price tag.
Did you know that vintage clothing helps out the environment?
No, not really, nah. But I'm guessing it could, because it's recycling. Yeah, obviously, it's recycling clothes, yeah.
How does vintage clothing compare to fast fashion to you?
Much better. I mean, no one hate me, I don't like shopping in Primark, really. I know it's quite common clothing. I mean, if you only need socks or something, or like, you know, black jeans or something, then of course, but there's nothing really that sort of stands out. Whereas vintage clothing, you can always change it around and, you know, try something new.
What advice would you give to people wanting to get into vintage clothing?
Depop is your best friend in terms of whether you're just browsing the web or, you know, you're actually wanting to buy some pieces. Depop, and just staying up to date with like social media and stuff. If you see any of your friends that have somewhat good clothing taste, ask them where they got their clothes, or, you know, if they use anything. Word of mouth is honestly really helpful, and try to see if you have any vintage shops, you know, around your house or something.
There is also a growing trend for an alternative way to buy second-hand or vintage clothing, the kilo sale, where clothes are purchased by their weight rather than per item, made popular in Holland and Eastern Europe. The events feed into the trend for upcycling, which means people remodel or rework clothes by adding embroidery, patches and other additions, and then put them on Facebook and Instagram. The stigma has been removed from what was once known as second-hand, now rebranded into the term vintage clothing. But what is vintage? John Hickling of Glass Onion Vintage says that the definition is constantly changing. The great thing about vintage is it is all about nostalgia. It means different things to different age groups. Another benefit for many young people is that they can make extra cash by selling the clothing they no longer wear online on sites such as Depop, which combines an Instagram-style image creation with digital market bargaining. Founded in 2011, Depop now has 10 million users, 80% of which are aged 13 to 24, and who buy an average of 20,000 items per day. Depop reckons that hundreds of its top sellers make more than £150,000 a year selling online.
Who or what got you into charity shopping?
I think it was when we were just like college and we were bored, so we'd go to charity shops in our way.
What do you look for in a charity shop?
don't really know. You see what's there, see if you like anything. You never know what you're going to find, to be fair.
What is special about vintage clothing to you?
No, I think especially if you get buying from charity shops, you're like giving them to charity, giving a new lease of life to their clothing.
Do you think charity shops help out the environment?
Yeah, I guess so. We use the clothes, they don't get thrown out, they get used again, they have a new life.
How do you think charity shopping compares to shopping at shops like Primark?
Well, I think probably easy to find better clothes at like them two places, as with charity shops it kind of depends on what's in the charity shop, so you never know what you're going to find. You can go in there and find really good clothes, then you can also go in there and find awful clothes that you like. Why would anyone want this?
What are the favourite pieces you've got from a charity shop?
Well, this has to be a good one. It only cost me like £3. That's always a bargain. Got this vintage Coca-Cola like shirt. That's really cool.
What would you give to people getting into charity shopping and stuff like that?
If you don't find anything you like, keep going. You never know when you're going to find something good.
The world had a wake-up call to the devastating effects of fast fashion when in 2014 the 8-storey Rana Plaza clothing factory collapsed in Bangladesh with 2,000 people inside. The factory was employing people on low wages with little or no health and safety to feed the West's increasing demand for cheap, fast fashion, manufacturing clothing for retailers such as Primark. The death toll was 1,138 people. In textile factories across developing countries, some workers do not earn enough in a month to pay for some of the garments that they are producing. They are forced to work in unbearable conditions so that factories can produce the clothes at cheaper and cheaper prices. The UK spends £27 billion a year on clothes. We love fashion, and obviously this has a cost. However, there are changes we can make that have less of a negative impact while keeping our love of fashion and style. This includes buying clothes made from organic or recycled materials, washing clothes less and line drying, buying second-hand clothes from charity shops and donating them back there after their use. However, awareness needs to be raised. Despite the many charity shops and increasing number of in-store recycling points in stores such as H&M, 3/4 of Britons throw away unwanted clothing rather than donating or recycling them. The idea of the charity shop holds an ethical appeal for some people. British fashion blogger Louise Croft says she buys clothes from charity shops, just wears them a couple of times and then donates them back again. She states she uses charity shops like a kind of library